I saw this story. Dave Bartu, College Football Matrix, we've had him on before, sent me a note about this story. Brandon Marcello, who's become like a regular because of some of the great columns that he's written. But the Coach Rating Index, and we showed you the top 10 at the top of the hour. Here's the 5 again, and these are not just head coaches. In fact, the only head coach technically here, based on ratings and data, is Nick Saban at 1. Lincoln Riley listed as a quarterback and offensive coordinator at USC. Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, joins us now on 365 Sports. Brandon, how did you dig into this story to kind of find all of this information? It's very unique because you include position coaches and head coaches.
You know, it's always fascinating to me that, you know, whether it's 24/7 Sports or other recruiting websites, you know, we rate, we scout players, high school players, and we assign them a grade, much like the NFL does with some players. And so, but what about the coaches? How do we judge them? We always judge them by wins and losses, but how are they in developing players? How are they year to year, whether it's a talent disparity or not? And the guys at College Football Matrix Analytics, as you mentioned, have been keeping track of this since 2009. They've developed their own formula, much like 24/7 Sports has a formula, in grading players and assigning them kind of these grades 1 through 100. And I've started talking to those guys in depth here the last few months, and you know, a lot of this information that they have in their own database is private, and they only share it to athletic departments in which hire them as a consultant. And they were willing, thankfully, to share some of their data with me to produce some content. And it was kind of fascinating to me to see some of the names on these type of lists. When I go, hey, who are the top 10 running back coaches? Who are the top 10 head coaches? And for that matter, who are the top 10 coaches, no matter whether they're a head coach or not, coaching in college football today? And, you know, some of these names, quite honestly, surprised me. And some of them, I've been sitting here, I'm sure as you look at this list, you're like, it's about dang time this guy's considered a top 10 coach.
Yep.
And it kind of, you know, buffers your own belief where you go, wow, finally, someone's recognizing what I thought, but the numbers actually back it up.
So, Brandon, I know you mentioned the Dave Bartu, College Football Matrix, that side of the equation. When it comes to just what you guys looked at and went into beyond just the wins and the losses, right? Because that's where so much of the focus is. What all went into these calculations and coming up with the end result?
Well, the way it's explained to me by the folks at Matrix Analytics is that they've got a massive grading system where they kind of go through individual units. So if you're a quarterback's coach, obviously they're looking at that. If you're an offensive coordinator, they're looking at per play efficiency. Same with defenses. That's mostly what they're graded on based off the formula that was shared with me. And then, of course, head coaches are graded on their win and loss records, but it's also broken down by the weighted difficulty / importance in 9 distinct categories that they've developed that range from expected close margin games to how they perform in games with equal, what they believe are equal talent profiles. So this goes beyond just, for example, as I said, per play efficiency, but also goes beyond just the wins and losses. They try to quantify, you know, kind of those things that we always consider intangibles. You know, for one, we could take stats and go, well, they got the number 1 offense, so obviously he's maybe the number 1 coach. Not necessarily. There's some other factors that they bring into the equation here.
So explain again, and I read it, and I tried to explain it when we showed up the 10 at the top of the hour. Lincoln Riley is here as a quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator at USC, but if you didn't put him in those categories, but as a head coach, he would not be in the top 10?
He would not, from my understanding. He would not. But as an offensive coordinator, he is. And if we were just going solely by as a quarterback's coach, he would be up there as well. But Lincoln Riley, I mean, goodness gracious, it just makes sense he would probably be up there based solely off of what he's done as a quarterback's coach or, for that matter, offensive coordinator. He's had 3 Heisman Trophy winners as a head coach or as a coordinator at Oklahoma, now at USC. Just an absolutely incredible offense he's had. And say what you will about his defenses, and that's kind of what's held them back at OU and, of course, last year at USC. But listen, he might not win 13, 14 games a year, which is astronomical to think anyway. Only 1 or 2 coaches have been able to do that consistently in the last decade. But he's probably the best play caller in college football. And the numbers back that up, that he is the best play caller in college football, whether it's offense or defense. And it's quite incredible what he's been able to do. And listen, since he's been a head coach, some of these numbers are insane. He's got the best grade as a play caller at 97.49, according to the Matrix Analytical equation. But also, he's produced 28 players in the NFL draft in just 5 short years as a head coach. And a lot of those guys, of course, first rounders, and of course, 3 Heisman Trophy winners.
So most people are going to recognize Lincoln Riley. I think everybody will recognize the guy on the very top of this list, some guy out in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, that's won a lot and done a lot of different things. But, Brian Hartline, I feel, is like a guy who's gotten a lot of attention for what he's been able to do at Ohio State, and he comes in at number 10 on this list. But you mentioned seeing some people and going like, it's about time. Who was maybe 1 or 2 of those guys for you that got some love that it was deserved?
Yeah, the very next guy on that list, Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator at Iowa. I mean, he has absolutely lifted that program on his back in my eyes in more than half of the years of this last decade when they've been able to consistently win 8, 9, 10 games or more and reach the Big Ten championship game. You guys saw the offense last year. It's one of the worst offenses in modern college football history, I should say. I always try to provide a little asterisk there because obviously there's offenses worse before we start throwing the football. But, listen, what they did last season was enough to prove it to people, I would think. I mean, they led all of college football and was the best in the last 10 years in all of college football and allowing only 3.99 yards per play last season. And, oh, by the way, they scored 7 touchdowns on defense. Incredible numbers. And he's been doing this year after year after year. Maybe not to that level, but they've been consistently in the top 25 in most defensive categories. Most teams, even the top 10, top 15 teams with their defenses, they're not in the top 25 in every category. His defense usually is. That sound fundamental defense that's built on the backbone of those linebackers. And last year he had an All-American in Jack Campbell, who also won the Butkus Award. Phil Parker comes in with a grade of 94.91. He's been coordinating that defense for Iowa since 2012. So he's got a long list of years to be graded upon on here, more than a lot of the coaches on here, and yet he's still number 9. Not a lot of drop-off year to year. One of the more underrated coaches in all of college football, and for that matter, one of the best coaches in all of college football, regardless of his position.
Which is even more reason why Iowa fans should be furious with the offense and the play calling because of not only a defensive coordinator, but I'm very soft-hearted when it comes to special teams and the difference. A good team can be really good, a really good team can be great, and an average team can be pretty good, or bowl team, if they have good special teams, block punts, punt returns, etc., and also the difference in punting and kickoff return coverage. I love the name on here with Brian Hartline. We know he's an amazing recruiter. Now he's going to have even more, I guess you could say, input in what Ohio State does on offense. I don't know about the rest of the ones on the list, but is he probably at the top of the list when it comes to recruiting?
Oh, yeah, he's near there. Him and Dale McGee, the Georgia running backs coach, he's been incredible on the recruiting trail. I've known him for the better part of a decade. But Brian Hartline is like the hot name right now, and he's been the hot name really for the last 2.5 years. And I think he's the next guy that's going to come out of the Big Ten as an assistant coach to be a head coach at a Power 5 program, even though he's not, quote-unquote, calling the offense. I think Ryan Day is going to mostly handle that again this year. But as you said, Brian Hartline is going to get more input into it this year with that finally having that title as offensive coordinator. And this is a guy who not only has gotten it done recruiting-wise and bringing out all these amazing receivers, some of the best receivers we've seen over the last decade, but he's developed some guys, too, that have gone on to be NFL draft picks, even without him being there. Jamison Williams, of course, being a guy who went to Alabama after being at Ohio State and having to ride the bench, went to Alabama and ended up being a first-round pick after just one season. The list of receivers is incredible. He's had 4 different receivers record 1,000-yard seasons in the last 2 years. Insane numbers, and he's got a great room again this year. I wouldn't be surprised if the right job opens up that we hear Brian Hartline as the head coach in the Power 5 this time next year.
Yeah, he's obviously very, very good. Was there somebody on the list that popped out at you that you weren't expecting?
Ooh, that's a good question. when you look at him, you're like, okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
But I would say Mike Tressel,
okay,
the linebackers coach at Wisconsin, does not coordinate the defense. Obviously, he's just handling one unit there. And listen, Wisconsin's been known over the years for playing their defense, but also I think what stands out about Tressel is that he's been doing it at different spots as well. He started up at Michigan State, where he had 20 guys earn Big Ten honors just in the span of 12 years, coaching linebackers, just really coaching maybe 4 guys at most on the field at once. I should say 3 guys at on the field at most at once. That's a great hit rate there. And he followed Luke Fickell from Cincinnati now to Wisconsin. I can't wait to see what he does now that he's back in the Big Ten, where he really started to get noticed and get going. I think that a lot of us just kind of maybe not necessarily put him on the back burner, but maybe we did because he went to Cincinnati. But that Cincinnati defense, especially those last 2 years there, when they made the college football playoff, top 5 in a lot of categories. He was the AFCA Assistant Coach of the Year in 2022. This guy, he's just been consistent everywhere. And you look at that grade, it's about as good as it can get. In fact, it's the second best score we've got here, 98.18. I should point this out, too. According to the Matrix Analytics, if you want to go 4, 5 star, that type of rating there, 5 stars are considered grades of 90 to 100. So the number 10 guy on this list, Brian Hartline, has a 94.77, which is pretty much a 95. So you're talking about, obviously, the top 10 here. You're talking about the elite of the elite. There are so many other coaches that are 5-star guys out there as well.
How long before a Kirby Smart slides into it because of what he did as a defensive coordinator at Alabama, what he's done now as a head coach at Georgia? Is it just a matter of maybe needing more wins and losses to get him in this conversation, or would he be right there, right outside the top 10?
I think he needs some more wins and losses. I haven't looked at the data really beyond number 10. They've been pretty limited in what they're offering me, and I wish they would open the entire books for me so I could have a field day with this stuff and just be giggling like a little boy. But listen, he's a guy that's right on the outside looking in based off what conversations I had. In fact, they wrote a little caveat for me in explaining that. Listen, you win a national championship this year. I would be surprised at this point you wouldn't be top 10 in these grades, but. As it stands right now, if we want to look at recent history, the last 3 years or 2 years or 4 years, even for that matter, I'd say he's the top coach in all of college football, regardless of position. Better than Nick Saban, and the way he's handled that program, blocked out all the outside noise and all the internal strife and things that's been going on there, and they just beat up on everybody.
Hey, man, great stuff, Brandon. Love the uniqueness of the story. When I picked it up, I'm thinking, okay, I kind of thought I'd know who the 10 coaches, and then I realized when I looked at number 10 with Brian Hartline, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is a little bit different, and I appreciated that. I know Dave Bartu and what they do at College Football Matrix. Great stuff. Turned it into a hell of an article. Thank you for joining the show today, and have a great weekend.
I appreciate it. More on the way. I'm looking forward to digging into more of this data.
Block your number. I'm telling you, block my number. We'll be in touch. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate your time. Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports. I love the uniqueness of it.